Let's look at example 20, question A. This time we have a cosine graph. So for cosine, the steps are exactly the same as sine graph, except that the basic shape of the cosine is different. That's all. All the other steps are the same. So here you can see that we're gonna have plus 0 at the back, so that will be our first step. And we can see that A is 2, B is 1, and D is 0. Therefore, when we do A times B, which is 2 times 1, that will give you a positive value. And hence, the basic shape of our graph will be an inverted bell shape. To find P, we need to use 2 pi over modulus B. And we can see that B is 1. So if B is 1, therefore modulus B is 1 as well. And hence the period P is 2 pi. Therefore, one full cycle will take 2 pi. We also need to find the phase shift, so just let everything inside the bracket equal to 0. And hence x is negative 1. Since x is negative value, that means our graph will shift to the left. We also need to find the interval of one cycle. So we're gonna minus everything with 1. And that will give you the interval of one cycle. Next is the minimum and the maximum. Note that D is 0 and A is 2. So we'll have 0 plus minus 2, and hence negative 2 will be the minimum and positive 2 will be the maximum. So now we can try and sketch our graph. So this will be our basic shape and the period is 2 pi. So one full cycle is 2 pi. Therefore the middle point will be pi. Now, we have already done the basic shape and the period. Next is for phase shift. So we need to shift our graph to the left 1 unit. So we need to shift this graph to the left 1 unit. So note that here, this will be exactly pi over 2, or about 1.57. So when you shift this graph to the left about 1 unit, okay, let's say I'm using this point in order to move to the left, and here at this point x is 1.57. So 1.57, when you minus with 1, that will give you 0.57. So you're gonna move from 1.57 to 0.57, which is about here. So you're gonna move everything to the left, like so. Alright, so next is for the interval of one full cycle. So you can see that it should be between negative 1 and 2 pi minus 1. We don't really care about that, but the most important thing is that this graph must be continuous. So you mustn't stop right there. You still need to continue. So if you want, you can try and just duplicate the graph. Like so. Okay, but we're not done yet because we still need to shift your graph downward or upward. So here there's no shifting upward or downward since your D, the value of D is 0. Next, don't forget to plot the minimum and maximum. So the maximum is 2 and the minimum is negative 2. And that is the function y. So from here we can see that the domain is from negative infinity until positive infinity. And the range is from negative 2 until positive 2. From part B, we can see that at the back here, we're supposed to have plus 0. And hence, A is negative 1, B is positive 1, and D is 0. Therefore, AB is negative 1 times 1, which will give you a negative value. So the shape will be a bell shape, and we need to find the period using the formula 2 pi over modulus B. And we know that B is positive 1. So if B is positive 1, therefore modulus B is 1. That means that one full cycle is 2 pi. For the phase shift, it's going to be x minus pi over 4 equal to 0. And hence x is pi over 4. So we can see that x is positive. That means we're going to shift our graph to the right. And we're going to solve the interval of one cycle. And the last step is to find the minimum and the maximum. So D is 0 and A is negative 1. So we'll get 0 plus minus negative 1. And hence minus 1 is the minimum and positive 1 is the maximum. So now we can try and sketch the graph. So this is our basic shape and the period is 2 pi. So that's for the basic shape and the period. Next is for the phase shift. So x is positive, that means we're gonna shift our graph to the right pi over 4 unit. So note that this is 0 and this is 2 pi. Therefore, the middle point here should be pi, and this is pi over 2, and therefore this is pi over 4. And since we need to shift our graph to the right pi over 4 units, that means that, say that I'm moving this point right here, so I'm going to move it to the right, like so. And then you're going to follow the rest using the first curve. Okay, but make sure that your graph should be continuous. You mustn't only have one cycle. So I'm just gonna continue drawing. Now let's check the interval for one cycle. So it must start at pi over 4 until 9 pi over 4. So pi over 4 is here, and it's gonna make one full cycle, and it's gonna end at 9 pi over 4. So note that this part right here is not compulsory for you to sketch in your graph. This is just as a guidance. And then before we find the minimum and maximum, look at the shifting upwards or downwards. So here there's no shifting, and hence we can straight away plot the minimum and the maximum. So the minimum will be -1 and the maximum will be +1. And this will be our function y. And hence the domain is from -infinity until infinity, and the range will be from -1 until +1.